This is episode 3 of the Wrong Fun podcast, dedicated to all things science fiction and fantasy.
Welcome aboard. We've a long voyage ahead, so we've lined up the best entertainment money can buy. Let's welcome our hosts. Hailing from Oaks Colony, Sean, and from Broncoville Mining Colony, Allie. So sit down, strap in, and hold on while the captain fires the thrusters to maneuver the ship away from the station. I wonder what a denial of service attack would do to the Environmental Control Unit.
Welcome back to the Wrong Fun podcast.
You're a wrong fan, and you're having wrong fun.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Allie.
And together, we're going to take you on a rocket ride in the science fiction and fantasy universe.
So, Sean, what were you up to this week?
Well, I spent the entire week in the Queen City, Charlotte.
And I got to see Jim Butcher.
You did?
Yes. I was such a goober.
You mean you didn't walk right up to him and say, "Hey, Jim, I'm your biggest fan"? And he didn't say, "And my prettiest too"?
No, I just said, "Hi. Do you do podcasts?"
So, let me let you all in on a little secret. Allie's probably not going to tell you this, so I'll tell you. I'm following Allie on Facebook, and I'm listening to her talk about, I'm going to try to go see this. I don't have a windshield wiper. I need a windshield wiper because it's raining, and my windshield wiper got stolen. Who steals a windshield wiper, right? And she's got this migraine, and she is so ill with this migraine. When she finally gets to, what was it, a bookstore?
Yep, Barnes & Noble.
When she finally gets to the Barnes & Noble bookstore in Denver, she's got to spend half an hour face down in a toilet vomiting from the nausea.
Oh, and I was sweating profusely. It was gross.
Okay, so Jim, this is your biggest fan. She put up with, migraine that would put most of us flat on our backs in a bed with the blanket pulled over our head. But she got in her car and drove in the rain to see you. Spent 30 minutes with her face in a public toilet in a bookstore. Have you been in these bookstore toilets?
Yes.
So that she could see you. So I'm hoping that you will be a guest later on this show. I will send you an email on this. I understand that he has so many deadlines that he couldn't possibly accept any request to be on a podcast until next year. So we'll be kind and we'll wait. But you've totally got to do this podcast so that you can be on with your biggest fan. Who do you know that has spent 30 minutes face down in a public toilet so that she could see you? Nobody else.
He said he would. Yay!
So you've chosen a book for us to read for next week, a novella. What have you got for us?
It is Speak Easy by Catherine Valenti.
And there will be a link for this in the show notes.
It is $4.99 on Amazon.
And that's for the Kindle version.
Yes.
And I love the blurb for this. It just makes me want to buy it, so of course I did. The Hotel Artemisia sits on the fantastical 72nd Street in a decade that never was. It is home to a cast of characters, creatures, and creations unlike any other, including especially Zelda Fair, who is perfect at being Zelda, but who longs for something more. The world of this extraordinary novella, a bootlegger's brew of fairy tales, jazz-age opulence, and organized crime, is ruled over by the diminutive, eternal, sinister Al. Zelda holds her own against the boss, or so it seems. But when she faces off against him and his besotted employee Frankie in a deadly game that just might change everything, she must bet it all and hope not to lose.
It sounds awesome.
I know. I just definitely. You're like, oh, we should read this. I don't know why should I read that. Oh, yeah, definitely going to read that. So $4.99, Amazon, Kindle, read it now, and then you can be ready for us next week, or wait till we talk about it next week and then buy it then.
Yep.
Link is in the show notes. Remember, if you use a link, you don't pay any extra, but you support the podcast. So, Allie, we got some feedback.
Yay!
Let's play a little feedback from Josh.
Hey, Sean and Allie. This is Josh out of Phoenix, Arizona, and I've got some wrong feedback for you. I'm loving the show, but I'm hoping you guys could make some changes in the book review section. During the first week's episode, I felt details were a little light on the ground about what actually happened during that story, and I couldn't really decide if it was something I'd be interested in. If we can get more information on that character and what happens to him, what's he do, what's he trying to accomplish, something that maybe will let me know whether or not this is something I want to look up and purchase when I finally get to the office. Also, if I can get the book's name and the author at the end of that segment as well, that'll just kind of help cement it in my mind. I can't take notes when I'm driving, and that's usually where I listen. Other than that, guys, love the show, love the format. Can't wait to hear new episodes. Thanks.
And thank you, Josh. We really appreciate this feedback. We don't know what we're doing sometimes.
I'm a newbie too.
Yeah, we're really new at this book review thing. And, I mean, how do you do a book review?
Where does the book review leave off and where does the spoiler start?
Yeah.
Should we start every episode with a spoiler alert?
Yeah, we got to be careful. We don't want to tell you all the good stuff. So I'm sure we'll get better as we go along, but we are very glad that you told us, and we'll try to give you some more info. Hopefully we did better in episode 2, and we're going to try to do better for this episode. So let us know how this goes.
But hopefully without the spoilers.
We will say the name of the book at the end, along with the author, but we want to remind you that everything we tell you about, books, websites, events, they're going to be linked in the show notes. We would really like you to take a look at the show notes, click on those links, and when you buy something from Amazon, remember that you're giving us a little bit of that money and at no extra cost to yourself. So you are supporting the podcast by doing this. So I sent you a link. What is it, about the middle of last week? I said, You should probably check this out.
There's always time for a nice cup of tea and a spot of mild peril. Well, hello there, my lovelies. I do hope you're well and haven't had half of your books eaten by your butler. I'm Emma Newman, and I'd like to welcome you into my secret tea there for polite conversation, abject geekery, a cheeky bit of cake, and of course, a nice cup of tea.
Tea and Jeopardy!
So I'm guessing you liked it.
I loved it.
Okay, so at the end of the Hugos for last year, I went through and I said, well, I do podcasts. I should probably listen to some of these podcasts. Now, I didn't vote on any of the fan casts last year because I hadn't listened to any of them. I had other things going on. I just hadn't listened to any of them. So I got each of the podcasts. I subscribed to them. One of them was this podcast, Tea and Jeopardy. And I just this is the funniest thing. It is so cute.
It is adorable. How did this not win last year? This was awesome.
Oh my goodness. And basically all she's doing is interviewing authors. And that's all she does, is she interviews different author each week, and it's just so adorable.
It's so clever. It's awesome. They've got singing chickens and everyone brings a little curio with them. It's so cool.
Right. And I'm listening to her do her interviews, and let me tell you, the contrast between her doing an interview and me doing an interview is striking.
Because she's adorable and she has that adorable accent.
Well, it's more than that. She doesn't interview people. She invites them in for a conversation over a nice spot of tea.
Oh, yeah, that too.
And they just have this lovely
it's
conversation.
So cute.
And you learn all about this person without really probing questions or, me being nosy like I am. It just doesn't sound the same. And it's more than just her accent. Americans think British people sound smarter anyway. It's more than that, though. It really is this lovely conversation that you feel like you've just been invited to sit in on.
And she does have her Twitter followers ask questions, which is kind of cool. I like that.
I think as we go along, we may be able to have sort of a list. Hey, we're going to interview this person, so what do you want to ask them? But for right now, we're still trying to get things straightened out. But just listening to her show, I'm going to learn a lot on how to interview people just by listening to Emma Newman. She's just fantastic at it. So you should check it out. It's teaandjeopardy.geekplanetonline.com, but of course, the link's in the show notes.
Sean, you have an incoming call on the Ansible. It's our guest, Kate Paulk.
Computer, what do your databanks have on Kate Paulk?
Kate is a transplanted Australian living in the wilds of semi-rural Pennsylvania. She's known to her friends as Kate the Impaler, That Mad Australian Woman, and Kate! She's published various short stories, 3 novels, and some other oddities. Knights in Tarnished Armor doesn't fit nicely into any category. The 2 convention vampire books, Convent and Consensual, are humorous mysteries, and then there's the alternate history written from the perspective of Vlad the Impaler. All her works are available from Amazon.com. Kate, along with Sarah Hoyt and Amanda S. Green, is running the Sad Puppies 4 campaign.
Patch her through.
Patch her through. Does he think I'm some sort of 20th century telephone company operator? Does he think I'm down in the bowels of the ship connecting Ansible calls manually with a switchboard and patch cables. Patch her through. Nitamada tiansha soderinduk.
Welcome to the show, Kate.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I see that you have your cats with you.
Oh, yes. I always have my cats with me. They don't like being away from the humans. They have to supervise their slaves.
I understand. Kate, Sad Puppies 4 has kicked off, and you, along with Sarah Hoyt and Amanda Green, are running it. Can you tell me a little bit about the plan?
The plan is to unleash the 3 Valkyries of the apocalypse. Well, actually, no. While people do call the 3 of us that, we're actually planning to collect a whole lot of people's recommendations for Hugo-worthy pieces and encourage people to nominate and vote for what they consider to be the best science fiction and fantasy for 2015. That's really all it is.
So it's one of those evil slates?
Well, I'm sure if someone looked hard enough, they'd find the words evil and slate in there somewhere. To those who define all things puppy as evil and all lists of works collected by puppy people as slates, sure, I could stand on a stack of Bibles and give a ton of legal depositions. They'd still claim evil slate, so who cares? I've already been called the worst person in the world. I share that title with Sarah. We're the evil that's too great to be contained in one body. And once you've been called the most evil person in the world, there's not much further you can go. So I might as well have fun, break out the popcorn, send a few truckloads of popcorn up to Mount Doom and watch the fun.
So what is the goal of Sad Puppies 4?
More voters, more nominators, more of everything. Our main goal is to get more than 5,000 people sending in nomination ballots, more than 10,000 people voting in the final ballot. We want to have so many people voting and participating in the Hugo Awards that no one faction can dominate anything. And yeah, that means us as well. We want to have a healthy, popular Hugo Awards that reflects what the science fiction community as a whole, as opposed to just the much smaller subset of, call them Smurfs, call them Chorfs, whatever, think is great. Because it's gotten very unhealthy. If you look back at the Hugo's own data, 6-7 years ago, they had fewer than 500 nomination ballots. Now, their best number ever was just a smidge over 2,000 nomination ballots. That's not enough.
So if the goal is to get 5,000 people nominating, basically all you're saying is everybody who is interested in science fiction should just go out and get themselves a membership for the next Worldcon so that they can nominate, so they can vote?
Yeah. The list is purely just a service to help people find things that they might be interested in.
I've read some of the people who oppose Sad Puppies, and I'm increasingly of the opinion that they don't actually understand us at all. Very little of what has been said about us has anything to do with what is actually happening. Have you noticed this too?
Oh, yes. It's an ongoing source of amusement. I say, let's have lots and lots of people reading and voting and nominating, and suddenly it's an evil slate because I'm encouraging people to get involved by offering a list of things that other people who read the blogs that I post to have actually enjoyed. And, Larry is said to have started the whole thing because he wanted a Hugo. Apparently he still does, despite him turning down his nomination for the awards that were announced last August. And he's already said he'll turn down any nomination he gets for next year. It's kind of bizarre. Larry wants to get a Hugo, so he's refusing to accept the nomination for a Hugo. Yeah, that really passes well.
That was another criticism of Sad Puppies 1 through 3. It was just a way for certain people to buy themselves a Hugo or give away Hugo awards to their friends. Aren't they just going to claim that again?
Well, yeah, but Amanda and Sarah and I, we've all recused ourselves from the list. Anyone who wants to nominate anything of ours has to do it on their own, and if we do get nominated, we'll decline. We've already said that. However, I'm quite sure that the people who think that Sad Puppies is vile and evil and terrible and all things wrong with the world will still say that we're doing this because we want one. Facts don't actually matter if they don't fit the narrative.
Ampersand at Alias a blog says, "Don't be fooled. Kate Paulk's kinder, gentler Sad Puppy slate is still a slate." maybe it would be a good idea to discuss what a slate is and why that bothers so many people.
A slate is actually a piece of metamorphic rock that's used as roofing material and was the original base for blackboards. The blackboard thing, because I guess people would put things up on the blackboard that you were supposed to copy down exactly, that turned into a kind of a metaphor for what Australians, back when I lived there, called a how to vote card. And at that point, pretty well everybody knew that it was nothing more than a suggestion anyway. It was kind of what they'd like you to do. From what I gather, it's super bad form to propose something like that for the Hugos, despite the locus reading list being, well, exactly a suggestion list, how to vote card, whatever, slate, despite some really interesting consistency in nomination counts and vote counts for Hugos before that first Sad Puppies. And the first one wasn't even really a campaign. Larry Correia made a throwaway joke about, bad message fiction makes puppies sad. It's the leading cause of puppy-related sadness. And his fans picked it up and ran with it. That was Sad Puppies 1.
Yeah, even I figured that out. Ken Burnside suggested that we build something like a reading list, which he says is exactly what you're doing.
Well, it's kind of amazing how many people have all sorts of advice and know exactly what the three of us should be doing. The fact is, the three of us talked this over for quite some time before I made the announcement. We decided on the approach we're taking, and part of it is because the Hugos are dying. They've become an anti-pattern, which is, software speak for a signal of something you don't want. And the people who are responsible for the Hugos dying and becoming this are the same ones who are claiming that the Hugos shouldn't be a People's Choice Award. And we don't want to mention too loudly that they're set up as a People's Choice Award and that the Hugos belong to the small faction that's been controlling things for years.
Pat Cadigan said this: "Whatever else happens on social media, on websites, in review columns, on Amazon, or anywhere else, I want a kinder, gentler Worldcon. Worldcon is our gathering of the clans, not a field of combat. We go there to enjoy ourselves and be among friends. For a few days, we get to hang out on Planet Science Fiction Fantasy. It seems like so many of the people who oppose Sad Puppies are angry that we have an opinion at all. It seems like their view is, well, we were just fine until you showed up and messed up our game. Why do you think that is?"
This whole, let's be nice, let's have a kinder, gentler Worldcon thing, it's kind of like one of the scenes in the Overlord 2 game. And if you haven't played the Overlord games, they're worth it. They are hilarious. They're also about as politically incorrect as you can get. To quote the Narl, who is the minion master and the evil mastermind behind everything, "Oh, now she wants to be friends. Nobody ever wants to be friends when they're dripping with diamonds." Which comes down to, when you're in trouble, you look for allies. When you think you're on top of the world, you crush your enemies. Now, this whole kinder, gentler Worldcon thing, that I think is a sign of, oh crap, these people are here, they're staying, we're not going to get rid of them. Even handing out the asterisks hasn't stopped them. We need to try and make nice so that they won't kick us out. Because, the publisher darlings for years have had it all their own way. This little tiny clique pretty much decides who gets what, and, if you suck up to that little clique, sooner or later you'll get your reward in the form of a Hugo nom. And you can tell this is happening if you go and you look at the nomination and award history for Best Editor Longform. You cannot tell me that Patrick Nielsen Hayden is so good an editor that hardly anyone else gets a look in. That's a clear, obvious case of divvying up the spoils. Someone has decided that Patrick Nielsen Hayden and whoever he decides is good gets this thing every year. And, part of the tantrum, I suspect, this year was that this year is the first year since the Best Editor Longform started that he hasn't been nominated. Nobody's that good. Nobody. Not even Terry Pratchett's that good. And Terry Pratchett is, well, I fangirl Terry Pratchett shamelessly. Honestly, if they really wanted a kinder, gentler Worldcon, maybe they shouldn't have started with the vicious lies that had people calling Larry Correia's wife, asking if she was all right because they'd heard he was abusive, or claiming that Brad Torgerson only married his wife to shield himself from accusations of racism. Excuse me? And they claim that, Sarah, Amanda and I, we're all white Mormon males. Since we all like guys, that makes us gay white Mormon males with great racks. The people who claim to want a kinder, gentler science fiction fantasy community, they're the ones who are throwing these claims around. They're the ones flinging shit. The sad puppies are, for the most part, not, and they squash anyone who is, because we actually care about the fiction. We don't really give a damn about the demographics or how nice the author is. We just want to see good fiction that we enjoy in there. I might be inclined to believe this kinder, gentler rhetoric if I hadn't seen all the flinging festivals that have gone beforehand.
Any final words for the listeners?
Main thing is to read, watch, look at science fiction and fantasy art, read the books, get a supporting membership in this year's Worldcon. They're $50, which, okay, not cheap, but not expensive either. If you can afford to get an attending membership, get one, because we're planning to be there. We're planning to hold a puppy party, which is kind of going to be a floating party sort of everywhere in the con. We may even end up with, depending on what the con programming looks like, we could end up with alternate programming in the puppy suite, which of course hasn't been set up yet because it hasn't been organised yet, because, it's only a month since the last one, so we're not really organised enough to do that immediately, but things will start moving as we get going.
If the listeners want to go to Worldcon, where is Worldcon this year?
Worldcon this year is in Kansas City, but not the one in Kansas.
The one in Missouri?
Yes.
So, for Americans, and Canadians, I guess, it's pretty centrally located.
Yes, it is. And the Valkyries of the Apocalypse are planning to be there, and we are planning to have a puppy party, and it's planned to be a convention-long puppy party. I won't necessarily be there all the time because I'm narcoleptic, and somewhere around 9-10 o'clock at night, my body gives this "you will sleep now" signal, and that's it for me. We are planning to get as many people as we can to the Hugo business meetings to vote on whatever proposals come up, because everybody who is a member and goes to those meetings is entitled to do this. And the Hugos die if there isn't enough interest, and that includes interest in the business meeting and voting on the proposals and doing our best to make sure that science fiction fantasy, which we wouldn't be interested in if we didn't love it, make sure that it is a healthy genre, and that the awards that are explicitly designed to be a People's Choice Award actually reflect the People's Choice, the entirety of science fiction and fantasy fandom. You need to read, nominate, watch, nominate, look at art, nominate, whatever you think is the best of its kind for published, released in 2015. Vote on the things that you think are best, because this Worldcon, every vote counts. Every vote might not count next time around because of the proposals that were passed in the last Worldcon. Those are actually designed to, quote, reduce slate voting, unquote. And if that's what they were designed for, let's just say the designers have a severe case of rectocranial inversion syndrome.
All right, Kate, thank you very much for joining us, and thank your cats for joining us too.
Yes, it's been great fun. The cats might not think so because they didn't have my full attention.
Right. Well, thank your cats for allowing you to give us some of your attention, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Kate is a frequent contributor at the Mad Genius Club at madgeniusclub.com. Links to Kate's Amazon author page and the Sad Puppies Facebook page are available in the show notes.
So I had the same impression of Larry Correia when I first read about it, when I first read about the Sad Puppies and the Hugos. It sounded like, for the first couple of ones, it did sound like somebody wanting to plug their own stuff.
It really actually wasn't something that Larry cooked up. That was the funny thing, is that the whole Sad Puppies thing was just a throwaway comment. He's like, Look at this garbage that they keep nominating. It's just lame message fiction, and it makes puppies sad. And somebody wrote a video to this. I mean, they just they found one of those videos of a dog sitting in the street with his head down, raining on the dog. The dog's obviously very sad. And somebody did a voiceover, the leading cause of puppy-related sadness. It was just hilarious.
The ugly truth is that the most prestigious award in science fiction and fantasy is basically just a popularity contest, where the people who are popular with a tiny little group of Worldcon voters get nominated, and thousands of other works are ignored.
But I could see where they would get that impression, just because the first couple of ones that I read, it did sound like, hey, vote for my stuff. Mm-hmm. So I can see where they get it from.
But yeah, it was interesting. The third one, which was the one that really put everybody over the edge, was they weren't nominating each other.
Yeah.
It wasn't a case of Brad nominating his friends. It was Brad crowdsourcing some people that he thought would be worthwhile to nominate.
Yeah, it definitely got better as it went on.
So more. So this is where you, dear listener, can help out. Spend the $50, become a Worldcon sustaining member, I think it's called. But you get to vote, and you can nominate, you can read, you can vote on the nominations to see who wins. And this is, I think, really critical, is the whole point of this is let's get so many people voting that nobody can dominate. If what we got is a People's Choice Award, that's pretty much what we want to do, don't we?
Yeah, we definitely want more people in there so that you get a wider variety. So what are these business meetings that everyone keeps referencing? I'm less familiar with the Hugos than everyone else, so maybe some background for those of us who aren't as familiar.
The Hugo Awards are supposed to be the most prestigious awards. Is it prestigious or prestigious? Or can I say it both ways and nobody complains?
You could say it both ways.
All right, cool. So I go both ways with that. So the Hugo Awards are the most prestigious awards. They're the award to have. You're the best book in science fiction that year. And it used to be a big deal. You got a Hugo Award. That was a big deal. And it really seemed to some people that it was the same people nominating the same things. Well, the way it works is currently that anybody who has a membership for this year's or for last year's or for next year's Worldcon, you get to nominate up to 5 works in each category. There's a lot of different categories. It's not just novel, novella, short story. There's a lot of categories. You can nominate 5 works in each category. The top 5 nominations in each category go on to get voted on at the Worldcon, or before the Worldcon, really, as to who gets the award that year. Well, that's the current rules. But they're thinking about changing it. They felt that people were dominating the nomination process. So there's some ideas on how to do it. I'm not really understanding them.
It seems like how are they going to change the rules? I mean, it doesn't.
The 2 recommendations that I've heard, and I don't know which one they're actually voting on. One of them is a 5-4, which is you can nominate 4, and they pick the top 5. So nobody can nominate all 5 in a category. So you can't get 100 people or 1,000 people to nominate 5 things and then take the whole category.
Okay.
That's one. There's another option, which is a weird mathematical situation where you can nominate up to 5 and you get 1 vote total.
What?
Okay, well, so if you nominate 1, that one thing that you nominate gets 1 vote. If you nominate 5, each of those 5 gets 1/5 of a vote. It probably makes more sense to say that you have 5 votes and you can allocate them to 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 different things.
Yeah, I like the 4 better. That makes more sense.
It sounds like it makes more sense, but it actually doesn't. If I have 1,000 people and I want to get 5 things on the ballot, what I do is I take 200 people and I have them vote for these 4 and leave out 1. The next 200 people vote for 4 of the 5 but leave out a different one, and I keep doing that so that everybody gets the same number of votes. It works out to everyone gets 800 votes. You see how that works? Very easy to game that.
No, I'm easily confused though.
Yeah, well,
I'm still on migraine drugs.
The real thing you're trying to avoid is a small group having an outsized effect. What's the best way to stop a small group from outvoting a larger group? Make that larger group so big that nobody can outvote them. No strategic voting can outnumber 5,000 voters.
So we definitely need to get more voters.
So that's where everybody comes in. If you read science fiction, if you read fantasy, if you are interested in the genre in any way, you need to be part of this. Spend your $50. 2 delivery pizzas is all it is. There are some benefits to it. You're supposed to get some of this stuff on your Kindle for free, but you'll probably have read it already by then anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But be part of this.
So is Worldcon just for the Hugos, or what kind of other events? How does it differ from, like, Comic-Con?
As I understand it, it's just a convention. Now, it's, like, supposed to be the most prestigious convention, but this year's Worldcon had a grand total of 5,171 people in attendance.
Dang.
So that's not very big.
No, it's tiny.
As our first guest put it, there were more people in the cosplay parade at Dragon Con on Labor Day weekend in Atlanta heat, marching in the street, than actually showed up at Worldcon.
Wow.
Dragon Con had more than 70,000 people in attendance. And you know that little tiny regional Comic-Con that you went to in Denver? And I'm thinking, oh, great, it's cute. It's a little Comic-Con in Denver.
It's huge.
It was 101,500 people last year.
Oh, yeah, it's huge.
It's not little. I totally had no idea.
I think it's the second or third biggest Comic-Con that they have.
So I would really like to get to Worldcon. If for no other reason, then that puppy party sounds like a lot of fun.
It does sound fun.
So yeah,
I want to be in a puppy party.
Even a sad puppy party. Because you know what? I have a hard time believing any of them are actually going to be sad no matter what happens. They sound like the most fun bunch of people.
Yeah, they do.
So, our book review.
Angles of Attack.
Yeah, I strong-armed you into reading Angles of Attack because I had it and I like the series. Again, let me remind you, the links for Angles of Attack and the entire Frontline series are going to be in the show notes. Let me read the book blurb for you and tell me if this doesn't make you want to read it. The alien forces known as the Lankies are gathering on the solar system's edge, consolidating their conquest of Mars and setting their sights on Earth. The far-off colony of New Svalbard, cut off from the rest of the galaxy by the Lanky blockade, teeters on the verge of starvation and collapse. The forces of 2 Earth alliances have won minor skirmishes, but are in danger of losing the war. For the battle-weary Staff Sergeant Andrew Grayson and the ragged forces of the North American Commonwealth, the fight for survival is entering a catastrophic new phase. This is classic, straight-up military science fiction. If you like military stuff, this is for you.
Oh yeah, it was definitely like standard sci-fi for me. What I imagine sci-fi to be.
A little bit of fighting?
Yep.
A whole lot of people thinking about how they feel about stuff?
Yep.
And surprisingly, there is quite a bit of that. But the series follows Andrew Grayson, a kid from the slums in the future Boston Metroplex, in a world where the economy has just basically collapsed, the government has become oppressive, the entire North American continent has become one commonwealth, and they pay some lip service to the old constitutional protections that people have, but, I mean, it's lip service only. Mm-hmm. People live in terrible conditions. Well, he leaves Earth, becomes a soldier, and we're in book 3 at this point. Book 3, Grayson is stuck on an iceball planet called Formalhaut in the colony of New Svalbard. I don't know where he got those names, but they're a mouthful. With the aliens landing on and destroying the local Sino-Russian Alliance planet, they've lost contact with everybody. The last thing they heard is the aliens, called the Lankies, have taken over Mars, and they might be headed to Earth. So it's a mess. It's down in the deepest hole. What are we going to do next? How are we going to beat these guys? And the Lankies are no pushover. They're like 90 feet tall.
Yeah, I didn't like there was a lack of description for the Lankies, which I didn't like it a whole lot. I kind of wanted to know more about them, but I understand that since the humans don't really know a lot about them, then we're not going to know a lot about them, but it kind of frustrated me a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about writing to know why it's done the way it's done. I mean, there's a little bit of broad brush. They're called sauropod-like, which I guess means dinosaur-like. But I think anything significantly big and possibly vaguely lizard-like is we're going to think of as dinosaurs, no matter what they actually look like, right?
Yeah. Well, I got the impression they were on 2 legs instead of 4, and I don't know. I kind of saw them almost as giant jellyfish on legs.
If I knew more about how authors try to put things, this whole series seems to be mostly through the eyes of Andrew Grayson. So you tend not to know anything that he doesn't know. And he doesn't know anything at all about these things other than they're big and they're nasty and he has to fight them. And so there's some basic description of it, but I really think that he's just leaving it as open as possible so that we can make up our own mind, we can draw our own picture in our own head, I guess. I really don't know. I have to ask him at some point why, what do they exactly look like, or is there a reason that he's not describing them very well?
I have to revise my description. It was more like an octopus with like an armored octopus. I imagine them having tentacles and... Right,
and what I imagined was sort of a cross between Godzilla and like, what are those big Japanese robots, the very humanoid looking robot, but
like
green.
Voltron?
Yeah, like Voltron, but green and from another planet. So yeah, wildly different views in our heads as to what they might look like.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know how intentional that was.
I don't know. So the acronyms were a little confusing because they don't explain all of them. He doesn't explain all of them. So for first timers like me, what's a PRC?
A PRC is basically a slum, but it's more than a slum. It's like a whole city of like ghetto that you really can't leave. It's something that's very well discussed in book 1. But yeah, I see your point.
Yeah, and then, starboard. I'm not a sailing person, so
Google.
What's starboard?
Google is your friend. Starboard, the right-hand side of a sailing vessel or a spaceship. Basically, what happens in this story, without getting too deep into it and throwing some spoilers, is that there has been a situation where the military on this colony of New Svalbard has mutinied and said, look, we're not following any orders anymore because the orders you're giving us violate the rights of the people in the colony. And we took oaths and we're not going to violate those oaths just because you gave us an order. And you can imagine how that's going to go over with the military hierarchy. There's 3 different groups that are arguing over who's going to be in charge. We've got the North American Commonwealth military. We've got the Sino-Russian Alliance military after they got beat up on their planet, and they've come and they've like finally decided, all right, we're going to work together. So we got the Russians and the Americans basically working together, even though it's more than just that. And we've got the people in New Svalbard and the military who have mutinied and are basically New Svalbard Army and Navy because they have their own vessel. Well, now they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do because they can't just sit there and argue over what they're going to do on this planet because they don't have enough food to feed everybody who's in orbit around this planet and who's on the planet. They're going to starve to death. So they have to decide what to do. The problem is that the only people who can try to run the blockade to get back to Earth are the people who have mutinied. And so they're all pretty in bad shape with the North American Commonwealth if they get back home. But it's starve to death or go back home and try to figure out how to straighten things out.
So it's kind of like your standard end of the world story.
I don't know. I don't read too many end of the world stories, but yeah, it is horrible. I mean, you're just reading this and you're like, well, what other choices do they have? I mean, they can all sit there and starve to death.
Yeah, it's like Battlestar Galactica without the Cylons, with lizard monsters.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. And not a single military. Like, Caprica had only one military.
They had a little bit of mutiny, and they had a little bit of clashing between factions going on.
Yeah, they did. One of the things that is missing in a lot of discussions of military and, science fiction military is what happens if there's a conflict between the government and the people. Because a government, by our standards, represents the people. It gets its power as delegated by the people. And if they go and oppress the people who delegated them the power, that's not a power they have.
Yeah.
One of the biggest themes in this series is the relationship between the civilian government and the military. And there's repeated clashes between the government and the people, and they put the military in the middle of this. And I've heard Marco talk about it. He said that one of the major things that he wanted to discuss with this book was that relationship. At what point does the military draw the line between following orders and following their oaths?
Yeah.
When I joined the military, I swore to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I didn't swear that I would follow whatever stupid stuff happened to come out of any particular elected representative's mouth.
Yeah.
99 times out of 100, what they tell you to do is going to be within the rules. It's going to be lawful. It's going to be following the Constitution. So most of the time it doesn't really come up. But it is technically possible. It's certainly possible that they will say, hey, do this. Well, that violates the Constitution. What do you do?
Don't they have provisions for stuff like that?
Well, they do, but then there's always the problem of what does it cost you? What happens when you say no?
There was definitely some self-serving characters in this novel.
Right, but that's normal.
Yeah.
Most people think only of themselves. At what point are you obligated to think of somebody else?
Once they met up with some other people, those other people were very self-serving. That's what I'm saying.
Right. And you have to understand that is going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
In a situation like this, you're always going to find somebody who is going to be more interested in his own skin, or worse and harder to argue with, is somebody who thinks he's doing the right thing by the largest number of people.
Especially since it's the end of the world.
Right. What do you do when the world is coming to an end? Do you stand and fight and die and go down with everybody else, or do you try to escape and take as much with you as you can? And that is always different for different people.
Oh, yeah. It was definitely good for examining that kind of thing, examining those situations and thinking about what would you do in this situation. It was good for that.
Right. And see, I would totally follow right along behind Andrew Grayson and Sergeant Fallon.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they're right. At least I hope I would. But look at the cost.
Yeah.
And even if you're right, the cost is extraordinary. And so you can get a real good understanding of what it costs to say, no, I won't do that. And it's all well and good for us to sit back and say, well, you were just following orders. You know, like you're all so superior that you would not have followed those orders.
That's the easy way out, though.
It's all easy for us to sit back and say, well, I would never have followed those orders. Oh, I never would have pushed those Jews into the gas chamber. And it's a lot different when the option is do what you're told or get pushed in with them.
Yeah, I liked it. It definitely made me think, but it definitely gave me that whole sci-fi thing that I like. It was awesome. I liked it.
So would you say that this book not only gave you the action and adventure that you were looking for, but also gave you some character and some deep thought?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I really enjoyed it, and I'm going to have to read the first two and pre-order the fourth one.
Well, good. In the show notes, you will find not only the Angles of Attack link if you just want to buy Angles of Attack, but also if you click on the Frontline series link, it'll show all 3 books that are currently out for Frontline. And you can get all 3 of those books for Kindle for $14.97. And that's a heck of a deal for a lot of entertainment. And what's special about being on Kindle, when you get a Kindle book, you can also get that audio book, and usually you get it at a pretty steep discount. So investigate that because, well, like I said, the last show, my wife has listened to both of the books on tape and didn't complain about it at all on the trip to and from my parents' house.
That's nice. And that's a fantastic deal.
I spent 9 years in the military. I was in the Army and I was also in the Navy. And this book just felt real. The whole series feels real. You know, you got the tone, you got the acronyms that you don't understand because, you know, there's even when you're in, there's a few you don't understand. You just go with it. And the personalities, I mean, I just felt like, oh, well, I met that guy once, you know?
Yeah, oh, yeah. I just looked and all 3 books are free on Kindle Unlimited. So if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read them for free.
Excellent. This is thinking man's military science fiction. You know, sure, you can check out, you can ignore the political issues, but even then you'll understand the unfairness of it all, and you'll be able to understand and accept the choices that the characters make, including the mutiny.
Oh, yeah.
And as somebody who's been in the military, the idea of mutiny, actual mutiny, not just like, hey, you know, wait a minute, maybe we should really rethink this. Because, you know, we've all done that in the military. That's like, you know, we might not say it quite that way, but basically we've all done that. I mean, oh, yeah, sure. Sergeant, are you sure about this? But, oh, no, and we'll shoot at you if you decide to try to force us. That's huge. Yeah. I don't think I could describe that. I mean, you think, oh, it'd be a big deal, but I don't think I could possibly describe to you how huge that is as somebody who was in the military.
Oh, yeah.
If he can make that just seem right, then that's some pretty good writing right there.
Oh, yeah.
So, check it out in the show notes. The book is Angles of Attack by Marco Close, spelled Marko, KLOOS. It's $5 for Kindle and $15 for the entire 3-book series. If you don't have the series, go ahead and spend the $15. You won't regret it.
Or, if you have Kindle Unlimited, they're free.
Woohoo, $10 a month for Kindle Unlimited. The Wrong Fun podcast runs on your donations. We count on you to donate or subscribe to cover our server costs and our book and equipment expenses. Making a podcast is a lot of fun, but it's not cheap. Please consider making a donation or subscribing. Go to wrongfun.com and click on the PayPal link. You can make a one-time donation of any amount or subscribe for as little as $2 a month. It doesn't sound like much, but we pay our server costs monthly. It's a tiny amount to you, but it's a giant help to us.
Thank you for joining us on this voyage. Music is courtesy of Simplify Recordings.
Send your feedback, both good and great, to feedback@wrongfun.com.
Show notes can be found at wrongfun.com/episode 3.
The captain has locked onto the station and turned off the fasten safety restraint sign, and you are free to move about the cabin. We hope you've enjoyed your journey with us on the Wrong Fun podcast. Don't forget to like and share the Wrong Fun podcast on Facebook. And if you've booked your travel today through iTunes, make sure to leave us a glowing 5-star review. And remember, this show is powered entirely by your donations. See our website at wrongfun.com for details.
This is a URS production.
Random noise.